Welcome to Cinema Cheese. It's time to wake up and act like you give a shit. Today we are going to be discussing the violent, suspenseful drama horror from 2023 from director Carter Smith, starring Kyle Gallner as the antagonist Benson and Johnny Berchtold, which I'm probably not saying that name right, so I apologize. As we all know, I'm not very good with names. He plays Bradley, or Randy Bradley. As it's pointed out in the movie, he has two first names, and he does get called both Randy and Bradley throughout the movie. So throughout this video, if I say Randy or I say Bradley, I'm talking about the same dude. Randy and Bradley, same person. I know, right? Fucking mind blown. So, I said horror last because this is considered a horror movie, at least to a point. The horror aspects of it, I feel, are pretty minimal. And I feel like it's really only considered a horror movie because how violent some scenes get, and the way it's portrayed. The tension and the violence portrayed onto the screen is phenomenal, and why I love this movie so much. This is definitely one of my favorite horror movies of 2023. Actually, just overall, it's one of my favorite movies from last year. It's definitely in the top 5. The movie starts out with a young Bradley. You don't really know what's going on yet, but he's sitting there, and there's a woman bleeding profusely out of her eye. They do explain that later on in the movie. I'll kind of touch upon it. I'm going to try to keep this video pretty spoiler free. There are some things I need to talk about, but I'm going to try to avoid any major spoilers. I went into this movie completely blind. I didn't really know anything about it, and I'm glad I didn't know anything about it because I feel that watching the trailer or really knowing too much about the movie before watching it would have taken away a little bit. I don't think it would have ruined it. It's still a really great movie, but I watched the trailer after the fact, and it does show quite a bit. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can either pause now and go check it out, or like I said, I'm going to try to keep this video spoiler free, but I wouldn't recommend watching the trailer until after you watch the movie, just because I think you'll enjoy it more if you go in semi-blind. So after the opening scene, now you see current day Bradley kind of getting ready and driving. He's heading into work, where he works at like a fast food type burger place, kind of not really buying anything else. There's like wooded area around it, which kind of implies that they live in a pretty small town, but it's clearly not a lot going on where they live. So he walks into work, and Benson's already there. He's mopping the floor, just being kind of quiet. Bradley says hi. He goes, takes his coat off, starts doing work, and that's when the other two coworkers, a guy named Chris, who's an asshole, and what I believe is his girlfriend, or at least his friend with Benny's, Jess, they show up. And then when they all get there, the manager calls them all in the back and basically calls out specifically Chris for being kind of, you know, a shitty employee and lazy and disgusting and all this stuff. And then as the meeting breaks up, the manager calls Bradley into the office because he wants to talk to him. And as the manager is talking to Bradley, he, you know, pretty much says, hey, why do you care so much about doing this job so good? It's like, you do things I wouldn't even do. You know what I mean? Like, why? You're not like everybody else that works here. And Bradley is clearly kind of quiet. Like, he just wants to go to work and be left alone. He wants to just kind of exist without being, you know, the spotlight or whatever. And that's pretty apparent, and it does kind of get into it. Not kind of, it gets into it because it's kind of what the movie is about. So the manager tells Bradley, like, look, you're a great worker. There's a new location to open up, and if you want, I can, you know, put in for you to become a manager over there because the work you do. And he tells him not to answer, but to think about it. So Bradley says, okay, and he's clearly excited. He thanks him, and he goes back out to the lobby to go to work. As soon as he goes back out there, Chris confronts him. And like I said, Chris is a dick, so he starts bullying him, you know, trying to figure out what they were talking about, and forces Bradley to eat a day-old cheeseburger that Chris had left under the heat lamp the night before, you know, because he's a bully, he's a dick. And as all this is going on, Benson steps up and says, stop it. And then Chris walks up to him and is like, why do you care? And Benson's like, you made your point and now you're just being a dick. Which I thought was funny, especially on the second viewing of it, because it's kind of what Benson does in this movie. He starts out with making a point and then becomes a dick. And he's still making a point, but he does become a dick throughout the movie. So Chris basically tells him to fuck off. and goes right back to bullying Bradley. And then Benson, you see him kind of just throw the mop down and walk out. You don't really know what's going on yet. He walks to his car, lights up a cigarette, goes to the trunk, opens it, and he ends up pulling out a double-barrel shotgun. And then he comes back into the restaurant. And this is kind of a spoiler, but it happens at the beginning of the movie, so I'm allowing it. But it's important to talk about. So he walks back in, and the tension that they had built from the bullying and the music playing and just the whole atmosphere is strong. And Benson just pulls the gun up, blows Chris away. And the way it shows it, like I said, with the tension and everything, as the shot collides with Chris, he like kind of blows back, hits the wall, and bounces down into a booth. And blood is pretty much everywhere. That scene, even though it was a shotgun blast, the way they portrayed it was super violent and done really well. And that's where I feel that gets the horror tag. Scenes like that. There's not a ton of violence and gore throughout. There is a good amount. But all of the scenes that involve violence are really tense. Actually, the whole movie is really, really tense and really well done. I want to point out that all of the acting, especially from our two leads, Bradley and Benson, superb. The direction in this movie was really great. The cinematography, they got a lot of cool camera angles. It's a road trip type movie, but the camera was pretty sturdy. So back to what we were talking about, the beginning scene. He blows Chris away, and then he's not quite dead yet, and he caps him again, and then he makes short work of everyone else working, and essentially forces Bradley, once you find out that he's not going to kill Bradley, to help him clean up the mess, and they move all of the bodies into the freezer, and they lock the door behind them and just hit the road. Benson says that he's done the math, and he figures that if everything goes as it should, they probably have about 7 hours before the next shift shows up for work, realizes the doors are locked, unlocks the doors, and goes to work before they find the bodies, contact the police, and figure out what the police are going to do with a triple homicide in such a small town. So that kind of sets a clock for the rest of the movie. Like, okay, this is all going to happen in the course of probably, 7-8 hours. So they're driving, and this is kind of where, as I was saying earlier, Benson said, you made your point, and now you're being a dick. So in the car ride, he kind of tells Bradley that he's doing all of this because he's been watching Bradley for a while and is bothered by the fact that a 20-year-old is more pathetic than everybody in this town. And then Bradley said that he's actually 21, not 20. And the reason why he got out of school late is because he got held back in second grade. So they're driving, and they're getting to know each other. And this is where Benson starts becoming a dick, because they go to a different diner because Benson's hungry, and they order some food, and just out of nowhere he just starts being a complete asshole to this waitress who's taking their order. And that's why I think it was kind of funny, because that was the same shit he said to Chris earlier, and now he's kind of doing the same thing. And it does escalate throughout the movie. It's also pointed out that Bradley got held back in second grade, and Benson's like, how the hell do you get held back in second grade? Thinking that his mom held him back, which she kind of did, but there was more to it. This is kind of a spoiler, but I feel it's one of those things that kind of need to be talked about. And I won't talk about the resolution to this, but he got held back in second grade because he was responsible for his second grade teacher losing her eye, and that's why he got held back. In the opening scene, that's why you saw a young Bradley and a woman bleeding profusely out of her eye. So as the movie goes on, they're traveling around and they're discussing things that Benson thinks Bradley needs to confront from his past so he can move forward and live a better life. And along the way, they meet other characters like Bradley's ex-girlfriend, stuff like that, which is all also really well done. When they decide to confront the teacher, when they find out that she's still working at the elementary school, they go there, and even though it's pointed out that this is a Saturday, there's people there. And as they're trying to get her personal information from the lady working in the office, an older man walks out and has a little conversation and says bye, and then she goes, bye, Mr. I didn't write down what the guy's name was. Bye, Mr. Assistant Principal. Turns out that's the assistant principal. Benson knows him kind of, because he said, are you so-and-so from this school that worked here at this time? And he's like, yes. Were you one of my students? He's like, no, but a friend of mine was. And then he's like, oh, okay. So then the assistant principal leaves, and then when Bradley and Benson are done, they walk out and they see he's still out there, and just pretty graphic, and it's really, really well done. But there's a lot of rage in Benson. and they tell you what happens to him like later. So they keep traveling on, and they're trying to do all of these things to help Bradley, and it doesn't really say, other than Benson wants to help Bradley, but it doesn't really say why, and I'm okay with that. It kind of leaves a little bit of mystery to it, I suppose. If there was one thing that I could complain about this movie is like certain little things, like why he picked Bradley to do all this stuff. They do kind of touch upon it, but they don't really give specifics as to what's going on or why. But the movie itself is so well done. It's super suspenseful. It's super tense. It's really violent. It's well acted. The set designs, the music, the camera angles, everything it just blew me away. Like how good this movie was. Definitely recommend checking it out. I have heard people on the internet say that this movie starts out super strong, which it does, and then it fizzles out. And like, I see what they're saying, but I kind of disagree. Not necessarily disagree, but like, I'm okay with it, because the movie throughout is really good. The beginning is definitely the strongest part of the movie, but it's so strong it kept me invested throughout, and the end is still a good ending. You know, it's not necessarily as powerful as the beginning, like the very end, but it's fitting for what this is. It's a road trip movie, so like it climaxes and then it kind of gets to the destination as a complete journey. So to me, it worked 100%. I was blown away. I was completely blown away by how much I actually really enjoyed this movie. So yeah, 2023's The Passenger. Highly recommend it. Definitely one of my top 5 from last year. I don't really like rating movies, as y'all know, but I will rate this as good plus. Whatever the fuck that means. I don't like rating movies because they vary. My ratings always vary. So like if I say something's a 6 out of 10, because at the time I watched it, that's how much I liked it. Then I might watch it again a month later and I'll be in a different mood, and it might be a 4 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. You know what I'm saying? So like I don't like doing the rating system too much because it all varies. I will sometimes throw that out there for people, but I prefer not to. I will say, this one, definitely like it. This one, definitely recommend it. Really well done. I am not really familiar with the director or the stars, but I will definitely be keeping an eye out for more works from them in the future. So if you have seen it, please let me know what you thought. If you agree, disagree, if you think I'm a bumbling idiot, whatever. Let me know all that in the comments. If you haven't seen it, like I said, it's on Prime. It's a relatively short watch. It's like 98 minutes, which is a great runtime for a movie in my opinion. A lot of movies like to be really, really long nowadays, and I don't always fully understand why. But in those 98 minutes, they send you on a journey, and they send you to a destination, and it was super satisfying throughout. So that's all I got. 2023's Passenger. Queso recommends. Until next time, keep watching cheesy cinema. Most importantly, keep watching cinema cheese. It's your boy Queso out. Peace. Oh, this movie is not very cheesy. This is cinema cheese. This movie is not very cheesy, and that's okay. They don't all have to be cheesy to be good. Peace.